Welcome back to another episode of the Be the CEO of Your Life and Business podcast. This week, Amy and I are talking about our topics always come from, like experiences that we have throughout the week. And this past week, this topic is coming out of this past week. And the topic is, and it kind of sounds, I don't know, you tell me what you think, how to manage people who suck the joy out of your life. And it sounds like a very negative topic, and I guess it kind of is, but it's something that, at least with what we do, we have to deal with on a weekly basis. And it can become really difficult to figure out how to manage how interacting with somebody like that makes you feel yourself. And I have found myself in a few interactions over the last week just literally wanting to crawl into a ball. I'm like, I can't deal with these people anymore. I've had enough. Like, it's so negative. I just don't want to be around them anymore, be in any type of committee or organization where they are involved. And Amy, you kind of like put me back in my place a little bit the other day. We were talking about this because you have to think about like other factors, like, why are you involved with them? Is there any positive aspect that this being part of this has brought to you aside from the negativity from these people? So, it can really affect you in a negative way, but if you change your mindset about it, which we'll get into, it can change the way you look at it, right?
Yeah, I think your mindset is everything. And I think realizing that these interactions that you have with any person, the only person that you will ever be able to control 100% is yourself. You're going to be able to influence other people, perhaps by the way that you show up. But if you're consistently showing up as the best self that you want to be, then either it'll rub off on them or it'll just make you feel good in knowing that you're showing up the way that you want to show up, even, despite some terrible behavior. Or it's just in our profession, we see it more often. And I feel like we've gotten to a point where we can like let it roll off our back, like water off a duck's back, right? A lot of it, we're like, okay, yep, here it goes, whatever. But when you are especially dealing with, a lot of things going on in your own like life and your business, you can start to tap into these things and say, is this adding an unnecessary stress to my life? And you can start asking yourself those questions. And that's kind of the conversation that Laura and I had this week. And it was good that we had that discussion because we could say to each other, we're very honest with each other about it. Like, okay, let's just play devil's advocate for a second, or let's think about this from a different perspective. And I think it was really a helpful exercise for us. But I think that we have at least 4 tips that we want to share today about the best ways that we have found to be able to interact with those people who literally are sucking the joy out of whatever experience it is, whether it's a client customer relationship, you're on, an organization with these people, you are in a family with these people, you're in a friend group with these people, wherever it is. I think that these 4 tips are universal.
And you know what I really didn't like this week, which bothered me so much, is that I didn't like how I let it affect me and how I was behaving. Like, I was so annoyed about it that I was just in a bad mood and like saying to myself, like, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to be a part of this. And then, I'm just not happy. And I don't like that because that's so not me. So it's like, how do you not let the way somebody else behaves dictate how you behave? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. For me, most times the feeling that I feel is actually not anger or frustration, but I get a feeling of anxiousness when I don't feel like I'm showing up as the person that I want to be. And it's literally, I tune into it a lot more now because I recognize it. And I've been trying to be more mindful and have self-awareness. It is a pit in my stomach or a pit in my chest. And I feel the anxiety rising in me. And at that moment, I'm like, okay, something has to change, because the only reason that I'm feeling this way is because the way that I'm showing up or the way that I'm responding to an interaction with somebody is just not aligned with me, or it's not serving me the best way. So something has to give. So
That's such
that's
a
when
good
I
way to put
think,
it.
right?
Yeah. It's like you're totally out of alignment
Mhm.
because you're like, at least for me, like I'm letting the way these other people act throw me out of alignment with myself.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't like that at all. I did not feel well this week. I was not happy. I was not in a good mood on these particular days. Um, and so, our first tip, you know what? You won't always be able to do this, but if you can, what's the word? Get rid of them, or just, even if it's just changing your relationship with them, or actually one and two. One would be to just, you know, get them out of your life. Like if it's
Yeah.
somebody that's not serving you, and it's not working for you, then just, remove yourself from the relationship. But a lot of, obviously, if it's like a family member or if it's somebody you work with, like you just can't cut them out of your life. So if that isn't feasible, then reducing and limiting your exposure to them, I think, could also work, which is what I am going to try to do with this particular scenario. Because there are other benefits to the situation where I have to interact with them. But there is a way that I can reduce my exposure to their energy. So for me, I think that's the route I'm going to go with this particular situation. But that can really help, right?
Yeah. Um, as a business owner, if I'll just pop in here too, limiting the exposure to a certain, level of negativity, or live like a level of just, not feeling like this is like serving your purpose or helping you serve your purpose with these people. That is like a huge takeaway for business owners. And this was part of the discussion that we had last week on our last episode. And it was a discussion that we had with colleagues too, about like, if these people are not valuing your worth, let's say they're trying to negotiate down your fees that you're charging them, and right off the bat they start doing that, and that that's how the trajectory of your relationship is going to be, then you have to get rid of that, or you have to reduce the exposure to those people, because it's just not going to get any better. And having that awareness up front is going to help you avoid this negative bad apple just like lingering around, right? So I think that that tip is really helpful. It's like, you can't give them the axe. Okay. They got to be around in some capacity, but you can absolutely reduce and limit the exposure to them and set that boundary so that you don't have to continue to like put yourself in that situation where you have to deal with them.
It just doesn't feel good. It
No.
really just doesn't feel good. And when you have a situation where you have to deal with somebody who really has a negative effect on you, either change how you interact with them, or what was your, like, I just love this tip from you so much. Change your mindset about it.
Yeah. So the way that I couch changing your interaction with them is, if these people are just constantly negative in your life, or you have an employee that's negative, that's showing up all the time, meet them with kindness. Meet them with the complete opposite.
Which
Even
is
if,
so hard
oh
to
my
do.
gosh, I was just going to say, it could be the most difficult thing that you're doing, and you might be doing it through gritted teeth. Meet them with kindness. Just try it. It's going to feel fake, because it probably feels fake for a moment, because you're not highest self is like, oh, I want to come snapping right back at them. But if you meet them with kindness and you try to not match the level that they are stooping to, you're going to ultimately feel better, even if it's just for that limited interaction. Second one is changing your mindset about this person. And this was the exercise that Laura and I went
Yes.
through this week. which I'm actually really proud of myself because I could be the snappy one like that. And normally she's the one talking me off the highest branch. So the way that this goes is, okay, I hear all the things that you're saying. This person is super negative. This situation is really negative. It's draining your energy. But let's look at it from like a pros and cons perspective. What else are
So
you
good.
what else are you taking away from this situation? What else are you taking away from this relationship? What else are you taking away from this team member's efforts that justifies them being a part of your life, and maybe just something else needs a little tweak? Maybe it is sitting down with that person. Let's say it's a team member, for example. I'm all over here with hypos, but let's say it's a team member, for example. Sit down with them and say, you know what? Something has felt a little off. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's me. I've got a lot on my plate. Like, do the mea culpa, okay? And take it on the chin for a moment. Say it might be you, just so that you can see if that gives that other person the level of vulnerability that they can kind of take themselves down a notch and say, you know what? Something has been bothering me, or I've got a lot going on with my family. I didn't even realize that I'm showing up the way that I am. Sometimes that actually works and it actually can prove to be super beneficial for the two of you to, regroup and restructure the relationship that you have. Because like we say all the time, we just don't know what happens between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. You
Right.
just don't. There's
Right.
so much else that's happening in people's lives. And so it could just be that they have a really off week, and just asking them about it normally, it'll start to temper whatever that situation is and that negativity. And it might bring a little bit more joy back. See, that's one example. But the second would be like, if this behavior is so negative, or if this energy is so negative, can you really tolerate it though? Can you just kind of like label it as like, it is what it is for this individual person? You don't have to show up that way. You don't have to act like that. You don't have to respond to them like that. And you're going to continue to just enjoy the benefits of the relationship or whatever it is and be on your merry way. And is that going to be sufficient? Right? Not that you're accepting the behavior, but you're dealing with it.
Where I struggle on that issue is, and I said this to you with one particular individual that we were talking about, I said, what I feel like I am accepting it. And by accepting it, I'm saying it's okay. Like
Right.
so I've seen this person in various environments, right? In various different interactions, and they are rude wherever they are. Okay. So I feel like by sitting there and tolerating it, I'm saying it's okay.
Right.
What do you feel about that?
So
It's very hard for me.
my perspective on that, this is so hard. I'm not preaching this. I'm just using this as an example because this is like saint-like mindset. Okay. if you are sitting there just quote unquote feeling like you're tolerating it, you don't have to be tolerating it just because you're not saying something. You could actually just make the conscious choice for yourself and have the autonomy over your decision to be like, you know what? I'm not giving you my energy. I'm not responding to whatever it is that's going on in your life. Like, I will bless and release you. Okay. You go figure out your thing. I'm going to sit here and enjoy whatever else I have to do and however else I have to contribute, and just ignore it. Saying that you're tolerating it is almost like, I think it requires something a little more affirmative. Like, you just, you acknowledge it. You say, oh yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming. I think that requires a little bit more. I don't think silence is always acquiescence. I really don't. And especially because in this situation, we're talking about how we are in control of how we are showing up and how we're responding to those people that suck life out of us. Because that's like the neutral experience. They're always going to be like that and assume that they're always going to be like that. Now, how are you going to show up to make it better so that you don't let that energy affect you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm really bad at it. Like
It's so
it's
hard,
it's
right?
something I really need because it's really hard for me to watch other people be treated so poorly by this person.
Mm-hmm.
And like normally, and it wasn't the right scenario for me to say something, like it wouldn't have been the right thing to do. But like in any other circumstance, I would say like, what, how dare you speak to this person like that? Like, how
Yeah.
could you treat them that way? So it's hard for me to just sit in that energy in general and just watch it. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I completely agree with this. And I will give a completely unrelated law example without giving too much. But I had a similar experience this week as well, completely separate and apart from my business. And I I did exactly the opposite of what I'm telling you right now, because I made it a point to point out to this specific individual that the way that they're behaving was frankly inappropriate. And I did not mince words. And I'm really comfortable about doing that because I, like you, I don't take well to people that use manipulative gaslighting tactics and are so, just condescending and berating of other people. It just doesn't fly with me. And in those situations, you have two choices. One, you could just be frankly honest and say, like, what you're doing is completely abhorrible and it's just
It's so
not
wrong.
acceptable. Right. Or you can figure out another way to attack it, to be like focusing on the facts, focusing on how they might be wrong, focusing how they might not be getting it completely correct, and taking the emotion out of it, because facts are not emotional. Facts are facts. So
Right.
if that allows itself and that situation presents itself where you can just really hone back in. And I remember we had a couple of instances where when things were getting a little heated, I would say, okay, let's go to the videotape. Let's go think about the facts. And that's exactly what you have to do sometimes to break up that, energy sucking negativity that is happening around you.
It is so hard to do,
It is
really.
so hard.
Um, and it's like a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
So I had a week that was filled with more negative interactions than I normally have. I mean, we
Mhm.
always have as part of what we do, but this week in particular was just more than normal. So finding a way to change your mindset about it. So after my discussion with Amy, I thought about like what have been the positive things that have come out of being a part of this situation. And I've developed great relationships, great friendships, great colleagues. And so there have definitely been more positives than negatives.
Right.
um, it's just I have to really work on reframing how I look at when I have to interact with these certain individuals,
Right.
because otherwise I won't be able to do it anymore,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
because it's gotten to that point. So it's either I'm going to reframe how I'm handling it and how I see it and how I let it affect my energy, or I completely step away. And for a few of the things that I'm involved in, I'm leaning towards stepping away because
Right.
they're not a necessity. I don't need the negativity. It's just not a necessity right now to do these certain things. So there, I'm leaning towards just stepping away. But one of the other things, I can't just step away. So I have to reframe how I'm looking at it, change my mindset, and change how I interact with them when I have to, right? There's really nothing else I can do, right?
Yeah. It's hard work. And it's like, folks, it's just hard. Okay. And it is going to be tapping into a you that you might not be used to, but doing the same thing over and over again and feeling that uncomfortability and feeling that frustration and like letting it boil to a point where it's just going to explode and you really won't be showing up as your best self. That's something that you can avoid by employing these tips. And that's, I think, what we want you to take away from it is that if you are dealing with a situation, something that might be bubbling up for a while or something brand new, try and see if you can employ one of the 4 tips that we've shared today and see if that changes that interaction and changes that relationship in a way that you don't feel like it is so negative or intolerable.
Yeah, so we hope these tips were helpful for you today. We thank you for spending time with us, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.